KoAnn Skrzyniarz is the founder of Sustainable Brands, an initiative to bring business that is looking forward to contribute to sustainability together in regular meetings and platforms around the world. That was some 20 years ago, KoAnn. Welcome to EarthX.
Oh, so glad to be here.
And why did you start Sustainable Brands?
Well, I think I spent a chunk of time in the early part of my career in paper timber mining and became very conscious of the limitation of our natural resources. And then I spent a chunk of time in emerging technology, traveling around the world and really looking at and understanding what globalization was doing to our planet, and really became compelled about the trajectory we were on. Felt that the narrative at the time that I had the aha that something needed to be done about this was broken, which was that enemies are the inherently the enemy of our future, and that governments and NGOs were the entities that were going to save us, which I didn't believe. I really believed that if we could not shift our global economic system to align in harmony with nature, that we would not get to the future we need. And so initially it was to change the narrative and to help brands understand how they could win in the marketplace through innovation for environmental and social good.
And why a conference?
Well, I knew the conference business. I didn't have money. Somebody gave me, well, first of all, I spent quite a bit of time trying to find somebody else to do this.
Yes.
And I couldn't. And somebody gave me $40,000 and said, oh, you should go do this. And so I didn't have a lot of money to start with. I knew that conferences could potentially spin off some capital to operate a business from. So that's why it's also a great tool for building community. EarthX is a great example of a community that's come together around this platform. And so that was the starting place. We did start with a digital publishing platform as well, which we primarily see as both an opportunity to build an audience and tell the stories of our stakeholders and also market our business. So that's why originally, yeah.
And so business should be a friend of the movement towards a better world.
100%, and not only a friend, but again, I've always believed and was fortunate to have a good amount of success in my early career, that challenges represent opportunity for innovation, right? And so those businesses that are savvy enough to recognize the threats that we all face through resource limitations, through climate change, and all of the disruptions that we're seeing more and more associated with climate events and pandemics and other things, are inherently motivated to try and reduce risks. And as the years have gone by, have started to understand the opportunities for saving money associated with sustainable innovation initiatives, but then the opportunity to actually open new categories of sales, grow sales, build a revenue, and improve brand reputational value have become evident. And so I think smart companies who are certainly operating on the multinational stage, as well as those who are really deeply driven at the regional level, are seriously paying attention to this topic at this point.
So over that span of those 20 years, what have you learned from trying to get business to tune in to more sustainability?
Well, I think it's been a journey. When we started, there was not a recognized market need for what it is we're doing. I intentionally started by attracting the sustainability teams. At the time, there was, CSR and EH&S were separate, entities in a lot of companies. Some beginning to come together in a more holistic sustainability team. But that group of people was not tasked with any sort of business strategy. They were seen as a cost center. They did understand the risks the company was under. So I started really working with that cadre of people, helping them understand how they might become a more strategic asset to the company, helping them begin to have the language that was necessary to build a business conversation, to sell the concept that responding to these crises that we're facing more and more could be business opportunity. And slowly over the years, that has they've been enabled. That conversation has happened, and there's again, I think, companies that have strong integrated sustainability activities are coming to be seen as a sort of proxy for good strategic business management.
Yeah,
and that's a new thing.
That is a new thing.
Yeah.
And so you've seen so many companies, you follow them throughout those 20 years. And that's interesting because that whole field, as you just said it, is relatively new. So can you share an example where you think, that is a company that really was able to find the path towards sustainability in a good way?
Well, there are so many of them in every sector. We focus primarily on consumer-facing brands and retail, especially because those companies, I think, have the most to gain by thinking about business model innovation, product innovation, supply chain innovation, and by engaging their consumers and their customers. And as I said, initially this work was seen as more of a risk management cost savings opportunity. But smart companies, and I will name Walmart as one of the inspirations for me that gave me confidence that my thesis that brands that really excelled at this work would be the leaders of the future. They demonstrated the power of business in their response to Hurricane Katrina back in 2007, 6, whenever it was 7, I think it was.
Yeah.
The fact that they were able to be more responsive in that crisis than government was able to be, helped me tell a story about the power of business in solving, problems that we are going to run into more and more. I took a lot of hit from...
I was going to say, Walmart was seen at the time as quite a big enemy, right?
And Coke was another early brand engaged with sustainable brands, and same thing. How could you possibly be calling yourself sustainable brands and working with companies like Coke and Walmart?
And what was your answer at the time?
My answer is because, there were a lot of well-intended small pure play companies and organizations bringing them together out in the world at the time. And I laud and value and appreciate and respect all of that work. But that scale was not going to necessarily address the level of crises that we now see unfolding and have known for decades, before even I got involved.
Would you say that today there is more collaboration between, say, business and the progressive movements, NGOs, etc., than there used to be? That has blended more?
It comes and goes. I would just to finish the conversation about Walmart as an example of that impact. During the last 20 years, we've seen evidence of the power of a company like Walmart in the role that they've played in actually giving scale to organic farming. And now they're very strongly behind regenerative agriculture, along with many of our other corporate members, including people like General Mills and Pepsi and Unilever and even VF. But in terms of collaborating, I think, I also spent quite a bit of time early on talking to organizations like Greenpeace about the value and/or obstacle that they were creating in actually driving influence. And I think it has been a both and. I think that they're an example of a company or an organization that really came to recognize that they might be able to have more influence if they could actually be in conversation rather than climbing the sides of buildings and doing some of the other stunts that they've done. So yes, I think there has been a change in the relationships. I mean, I will say that a lot of the companies we work with, or let me say it a different way, a lot of the change agents in the companies that we work with respect and appreciate some of the sticks that they are under, because it does help in some cases internal change makers find more support. But where an external organization can be a both hold business accountable and also be a partner in helping ideate around and validate solutions, I think that's where the best kind of change happens.
So I'm sure you see opportunities for businesses to do more than they do. And that's always the case, of course. And they have to make these trade-offs and the bottom line and all that. Of course, we understand that. To what extent do you think that a government can stimulate the transformation that we need?
Well, we know that that changing the rules of the game is the biggest enabler of rapid shift in business systems. And so I've always said changing the rules of the game is the ultimate goal for all of us, and there's still a lot of work to be done in that. I will say that today, and I was really inspired by speaking at more depth with Amazon this week as an example of this, but most of the companies that are in our corporate member network again understand the long-term risks that they face, and regardless of the political environment are not changing their goals, because they realize that they will not be in business if they don't hold on to the commitments that they have. And I think more and more investors are getting behind this. Consumers are not changing their interest in businesses' activities as it relates to environmental and social support. So
you say regardless,
yes,
the political winds wherever they blow.
It makes it a lot harder, and it's real. And I think especially it forces companies to be very thoughtful and probably step back quite a bit from their speaking. I think we went through a similar period in the 2008-2009 time frame when we had a green rush period, in the 2007-2008, where you saw all the CEOs, GE and Walmart and others who were making strong environmental commitments on the covers of all the business magazines, and then there was a pushback around claims of greenwashing, and then there was a green hush period. We're in another period similar to that now, and I think the thing that is sad for all of us is that green hushing is as much of creates as much of an obstacle for reducing the business value being generated from this work as greenwashing does. And so we're only doing all of ourselves a disservice by making it so difficult for companies to try to talk about what they're doing. My experience is, and again, I'm grateful to have had exposure to and been working with a lot of business leaders and a lot of the companies that you recognize and engage with every day. They really have the right intentions, and they're doing everything they can, again, within the rules of the game.
Because they are also citizens like you.
Of course,
and I.
They have kids. They they feel obligated to be able to look themselves and their children in the face.
And they're just playing the game according to the rules. But
correct.
Back to your point, so changing the rules, of course that's important.
Yes.
But what rules are you thinking of? What you've studied this field.
Well, I'm not a politically engaged human, particularly traditionally, because I do feel that I have more experience in the business sector, and I feel like the rules are more clear. But obviously, things like short-term trading, create challenges for business leaders who know what the right long-term thing is to do, but are
for long-term vision
facing pressure from their shareholders. Obviously, the incentives, make a difference in terms of, and subsidies make a difference in terms of where companies can afford to invest. So I think there are a lot of things. I think I mean, we can talk about the communications dynamic that we live in today, the world we live in today. It's very difficult for the common person to really get access to what is true and what isn't true. And I think I recall having Jonas Sachs, I don't know if you remember who he is,
Yes.
but he wrote a great book called Story Wars many years back, and really predicted what's happening and spoke about the importance of story wars. We are in the middle of a period of story wars,
So we don't know what truth is.
it's very difficult to know what truth is for everyone, and the issues are complex. Consumers who want to do the right thing with their purchasing have a lot of homework to do and no time to do it. So that is something that we have to work to overcome. I think there are some interesting solutions on the horizon that I think AI can be a help with, and I'm excited about that.
Well, that is, when I sort of take a pause when you say AI can be helpful, because I'm sure that's true, but it is also easy to see how it can be not helpful.
Yes.
and make it worse.
I mean, that's true with every innovation,
Yes.
that comes to market. Generally, things come to market in support of either military defense or aggression or some other nefarious industry.
Yeah.
Before they, eventually become adopted by, people who are interested in using tools for good. I have been involved in the innovation space for most of my career, and so I guess I'm a little less afraid. In fact, I published AI Expert magazine, the first magazine on artificial intelligence in the 90s. So this is, for me, a long time coming. And I think there is some real concern, for sure, about the massive explosion in artificial intelligence on many levels, not just the implications of growing CO2 emissions that are outpacing the CO2 reduction efforts of companies like Google and Amazon, but also, just our, the impact it's going to have on jobs, et cetera. I mean, we could go on. There's philosophical issues.
But sure. Technology, let me address that. So we know that if you go back to the time that in Silicon Valley they built the digital media world we're living in today, there were many good things about that.
That's right.
And democratizing the news and all I can go on and on and on. And at the same time, if we look back now, that's also about 20 years, and we can sort of conclude that, maybe if these leaders had acted a little bit more consciously at that time, when they put the system in place, that it would have been better today.
Well, I think a lot of what we're facing now is a function of the great breakthrough in free access to content, because, the truth is journalism costs money.
Yeah.
And if everybody expects all their content to be free, how do they expect at the same time for the kind of, discernment and effort that is required to put out, good, well-documented, valid content.
Traceable news,
Yeah, and I think, I think one of my long-term passions has been about driving home this short-termism that we have in our innovation processes, even in that we don't tend to think about unintended consequences at the design phase, instead of figuring out how to mitigate them when we figure out what they look like. I do think that that's changing now. I think that that's an example of a fabulous kind of legislation. If somebody wanted to have a high lever, influence, it would be doing whatever could be done to try and require that people. In fact, we were talking about this on a panel here this week. The fact that Europe requires that companies demonstrate that new chemicals that go into their consumer products are safe before they go to market, instead of
the other way around,
which is how it is in the U.S. So,
let me take you back to the woman who was there some 20 years ago, a little longer, thinking about a conference that should be there and that she didn't want to organize, and she tried everybody else to make it to have it done, and then ultimately decided to do it. and that's you obviously, and now today you look back. Are you happy with what you have achieved?
I mean, I don't think of it as what I have achieved. I think when I came to the decision to do this work, it was from the perspective of making myself available to the universe, if you will. I know that's kind of philosophic, but I basically said, okay, if I'm supposed to be doing this, you universe, help make it happen. So I've always thought of this as through me, not from me. I think that I have realized in this half of my career, I was very fortunate in the first half of my career to never feel the limitation of being a woman in business. I will say that being an entrepreneur in business and trying to find funding as a woman entrepreneur has been really difficult, and I've seen others, not women, with maybe different track records, be more successful in the fundraising side of it. So that does kind of make me sad. I do wish that I could have seen or that I could see the opportunity to validate what I know is here in the way of the market opportunity had I had the funding that I knew would be necessary. But other than that, I am pretty happy with the impact that we've had and continue to have. I am always asking myself, are we irrelevant? Not just myself, but I'm always asking our customers, is there some reason for us to continue? And I'm constantly hearing yes, 100%, and I see that on many continents, and it is inspiring and humbling.
Great contribution, KoAnn. Thank
Really,
you.
I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for doing it.